Hello every folks, and good morning. Okay, so technically, this one ended up losing the poll by a landslide, but you know what, I'm just curious to discuss it anyway. So, there was a joke on the last poll that I put out, basically saying, hey, let's make a video on potentially the most useless debuff in the game, which is Misstep, and specifically, that there's two weapons specifically upgraded to use it. So is there any world in which these are actually useful? And at first I was thinking, yeah, no, this is kind of pointless. But you know what? Actually, there is a potential use. So I was going and setting up that no grind file still. I would say probably a few days out from that being fully ready to go. But when I was looking through these, it's like, you know what? There's actually a pretty reasonable use for this. Surprisingly, dealing with the random level 50s that you run into in Palace of the Dead. Now, in most cases, like when it comes to offensive stuff, generally speaking, levels are not as big of a factor as people like to make them out to me. But when you're, for example, running around with 30s and that guy's coming in with 50s as well as boosted stats, like a lot of the times it isn't the fact that they are 50, but the fact that they've got, some special characteristic on top of that that's actually causing them to be harder. Anyway, point being, those 50s are generally speaking a gigantic loot pinata that will disappear if you don't kill them before the end of the fight. And if you try to fight them directly, well, you're gonna have a bad time. But when it comes to a few different methods, there's one that kind of stands above the rest, and that's poisoned arrows. Because, simply put, you just kind of shoot them with some poisoned arrows, and then hopefully switch over to some stunning arrows, and you just kind of let that problem sort itself out. You go deal with the rest of the fight, and your stuff will be waiting for you in a bag by the time you're done, right? So how is this related to the axes? Well, surprisingly, due to the way that accuracy works, there's only a couple of cases where you'll actually see ranged attacks miss. Namely, when you're going and fighting in swamps in heavy rain, where their accuracy will potentially drop to the low 60s or 70s, simply because, just like everything else, their accuracy drops in the rain, or when they're standing on bad terrain. But also versus cases where something has extremely high avoidance, like those guys do. So, in an oddly specific case, yes, if you're going and putting these on somebody like a warrior unit or something like that, just using them as an offhand defensive weapon to apply Misstep, they're reasonably lightweight compared to some other things, like endgame swords and things that are running around with 10s and stuff. These guys are potentially an offhand parrying option that are going to be showing up at weight 5, which is still not exactly ideal or anything, but it's only slightly more than a shield, and also would allow you to use something like a Vigorous or a Mighty Strike to guarantee that Misstep, which would then guarantee the Poison Arrow, and it's one of the only cases I could think of where you'd actually need to kind of reapply Misstep over and over, and it might actually expire, so you may not necessarily want to, just load up on items for it. Anyway, I just thought it was kind of interesting, so that'll be kind of that. Actually, technically speaking, the Chukmak is also going to be reasonably useful for the same reason that the Scimitar has a little bit of life later, which is that 5% people scaling, so it's kind of got its own thing going on. But if we're looking specifically for a reason to justify keeping the Battle Axe around, it's very oddly specific, but it could be a tool for the job if needed. Alright, y'all have yourselves a good one. Take care.